Welcome to the channel. This is Yasida, the spiritual samurai. This video is for the survivors of SA, myself included. I'm going to be sharing some information that I've gathered throughout my life that has helped me reach this high vibration that I'm in right now. It's hard for me to believe that I've actually overcame what I've overcame. At this point in my life, I can't even fathom the fact that I've made it this far. So it's only right for me to not only dedicate my life to elevation, but also to do the best I can to spread the insight that I learned throughout my healing journey, and also trying to really help as many survivors as I can, because SA is something that only a survivor truly understands. And with all the information that I've gathered throughout in my life, it would only be great. It would only be honorable for me to share all the things that I've learned that can actually help and save lives out there, because perspective is everything. Our mindset is everything. And when you're in that dark place, it's really hard to get out. And then this SA is not something that people like to talk about. This is not something that people are so eager to go to therapy and just spill it all out. It's not an easy thing. That's why I went, well, for not just for that reason, but of course, besides the money part, besides the lack of finances, I did not seek therapy until the 2023, between 2023 and 2024. So, and my, traumatic experiences happened to me when I was a child, which was way back in between the late 90s and late 2000s, around that time. So that's a long time ago, considering when I actually went to get help. But another thing to consider is that I started my own independent healing journey starting in 2012 through my writing. That is when I discovered my gift of writing. I started using that. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But there's a lot of ways to navigate around this. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are suffering from the psychological effects and the psychological impacts that SA brings to a person. The older they get, the longer you go unhealed, the more worse it's going to get. So we have got to make sure that we help each other out the best that we can. And that's basically what my mission is here. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how trauma protected me and how healing allowed me to heighten my senses and spiritual vision. So the first part I want to really talk about is how trauma protected me. Now, as fucked up as SA trauma is, I have got to admit that because of that trauma, at least the way I responded to it, it protected me from a lot more dangerous situations that I could have been in. Or it also protected me from getting close to men. Like, I was not quick to do that. So let me break down every part of this right here. So SA trauma protected me from being blind to the evils that some men do. It's something about looking into the eyes of the most conniving. It's something about being exposed to evil at a young age that, of course, it'll traumatize you, but it forces you to think fast. It forces you to, you have to really pay attention to your surroundings. It made me read people with 99% accuracy, which in turn also, it has also given me a higher IQ. Every time I take an IQ test, I always score over 120. And I'm not the type of person to be bragging about stuff like that, but there's a correlation between that. Somebody pointed it out to me, and that's when I discovered that, and I'm like, that is pretty interesting. So with that, now, a high IQ, all it is the ability to detect patterns, whether it is through shapes, geometry, mathematics, but also detecting patterns in human behavior. And so that when you combine the two, it's like all of this is connected. And when you see these connections, you're not going to be easily manipulated. And that's the thing about me. When you go through these things, at least in my case, um, yeah, it gave me a cynical perspective. Yes, it gave me a negative worldview, but it's better to have that than to be a gullible dummy that thinks that everything is unicorn and rainbows. Now, please, I don't mean to sound like an asshole, but that's just the way it is, especially when you come from a certain environment where you just don't have the luxury to be dumb. I'm sorry. You just don't. You got to pay attention. Otherwise, that's your ass. And that's just how I feel about it. So, because of my, being able to read people with such accuracy, I was not easily fooled by the snakes around me. So it's very hard to manipulate someone that can see patterns. They can sense energy, using both the logical, analytical, and the creative mind, which again, it has put me in a position today where I'm amazed at what my mind can do. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one out there. You get to a point where you damn near feel like you can read minds. Mind reading and vibe detecting. Energy doesn't lie. And all energy is, it's basically an abstract form. It's like an abstract pattern that can be felt through your senses. So when you think of a pattern, it's something that you have to see, right? It's a visual thing, but patterns can also be auditory through your hearing. Another thing too, speaking of hearing, I can tell when a person lies based on the inflection of their voice, which is again heard, the sound of their voice. A slight change in the tone of voice will let me know that a person is full of shit. See, stuff like that people might think you're crazy. Like people have called me crazy, but guess what? You can call me crazy all day, but guess what? Have I ever been wrong about certain individuals? Of course not. You know, we won't get into too much of that situation. I just want to share these things that I've learned, man. This information. So now, from a very young age, when I look back, when I was a little girl at I would say the youngest age, like maybe I was about 5 years old, when I remember being able to sense the darkness in certain men who had abusive characteristics. You could just feel the darkness in them. It's not just, oh, I feel this way. No, this isn't just feelings. This is my antennas. I detect an abuser in my vicinity. And I understand that this doesn't apply for everyone, because I didn't feel that toward every man. I can kind of tell, like, some men, okay, I know that man is a good man. But then certain individuals, you just know it's something about them. Being in survival mode in a hopeless place is wisdom, right? At least for that time being. Eventually, we're going to have to rise from that. We have to elevate. But elevation can only happen when you finally decide to move out of that environment and go to a place where you can thrive. So that's what that is. But we're going to get into that in just a second. I want to talk about my lack of trust in men has saved me, because I wanted to be covered. I did not want to be seen. I did not want to be, I did not want male attention at all. Like, I prefer to be respected by men than to have their attention, because attention is fleeting, and attention does not necessarily mean that they respect you. Again, I was not wrong for being in survival mode in a hopeless place. But I would be wrong if I decided that I wanted to take my anger out on men that had nothing to do with my pain. And that is why I did what I needed to do to heal and to get to this point that I'm in right now. Now, another thing, SA trauma protected me from being stigmatized. Do you know how messed up it is to be a sex addict? Being a sex addict, it prevents you from growth. It prevents you from so many different things. It's not something that is enjoyable. Sex addicts, they actually hate being sex addicts. So despite the fact that we all like intimacy, all right? We're not going to pretend like we don't like that. But when your sense of safety is jeopardized, when you have this anxiety around the opposite gender, it's kind of hard to be stigmatized if you're looking at this person like this person could potentially end my life if they feel like it, or they can damage me in ways that I don't want to go back to that. You know, it's intimacy is a serious thing, and I was never interested in casual intimacy. Like in today's day and age, everybody worships hookup culture, right? Everybody glorifies that. I was not a part of that. So people might think, oh, there's something wrong with me. No. You know? So that's one of the things that SA trauma protected me from, was from hookup culture, because I did not engage in that because I didn't want to. You know, and it's not because obviously it's not because we don't desire, you know, the intimacy per se. Is the fact that the trauma has instilled so much anxiety and in some ways some level of fear, to where I know that, I don't know, it's like the self-consciousness goes into play. You know, being self-conscious about how you look. You could be beautiful, right? Because a lot of people, you know, they compliment me, they think I'm beautiful. Okay, but if you don't want to be bothered, if you want to be covered, you don't want to be seen by a man because of what you've been through, it's kind of hard to hook up, man. And you know what? I ain't mad at that, because that protected me, because there's nothing out there anyway. You're not missing out by staying to yourself. You're not missing out by not participating in hookup culture. So it got to a point where some people thought I was a lesbian. Like, some people really thought I was a lesbian, for real. I can't tell you how many times people assumed that. And you know what? That's not necessarily a bad thing, because that also saved me, because some guys, man, they just assume I didn't like guys. Good. It's a good thing. You know? That's a good thing. So that saved me. In a way, it makes you invisible too. Especially because I used to wear like very loose clothes. I didn't really, you know, I don't like bringing a lot of attention to myself. It wasn't until late high school, my late teens. It wasn't until my late teens where I actually felt like, you know what, let me wear something, you know, a little more, something that, you know, wear something that's not baggy, you know. But I still like to wear my little jackets, you know, like my bomber jackets and stuff like that. Something to kind of cover with still, but it was a huge step for me to wear some form-fitting jeans and stuff like that, because, you know. So now let's move on to the next thing: how healing heightened my senses and spiritual sight. Look, we can't change what happened to us, but we can shift our perspective to make it work in our favor, and that is the art of transmuting energy. Wisdom only comes through healing, because when you look at people through a broken lens, your discernment is going to be off. But when we get older and we live in a different environment, our minds and nervous system is stuck on, basically it's stuck on war zone. By the time you move to a place where you can, you know, everything's okay, your body, your mind does not compute that. So your discernment is going to start to become off, because now you're going to think that everyone's out to get, everybody's got an agenda, this person wants to do something to you. Oh yeah, you know, you're going to feel that even toward people that are not even thinking like that. There's people that actually care about us, right? But we don't know that, because we don't know what the fuck that is. Because to us, when we seen people show us love, it was love bombing. When we seen people care about us, it was because they wanted something out of us. It was because they wanted to gain our trust so that they can violate us. You know, so that's all we know. So obviously, when somebody's nice, it gets to a point where if somebody's nice to you, you want to go off on them. You want to curse them out or whatever, and they look at you crazy, like, what the fuck is wrong with this person? And they don't understand that your mind is still thinking that it's in that place that you were. But people can genuinely be nice to you because they care. It's not because they want something out of you, you know. But again, when you look at people through a broken lens, your discernment is going to be off. It is. You know, this is where we have to learn new patterns. We have to learn healthy patterns and stuff like that, you know. Now, in my case, because traumas forced me to have an elevated IQ due to being able to detect patterns quickly. This has benefited me greatly, because now it made me a really good problem solver, critical thinker, things like that. And I end up using these skills in the real world because, again, contemplate, think. What can you do? What can you do to make great use out of your pain? And what I mean by that is, how can you take advantage of your disadvantages? What type of skills have you acquired being in survival mode? Well, like I said, in some cases, an elevated IQ, being able to see patterns, can make you a very good mathematician, data scientist, and stuff like that. At least in my case, that's what I'm studying. I'm in the STEM field, so it's like I didn't realize, for me, figuring out problems is easy for me because I can see it like that. And I'm putting myself in a position where I am challenging myself. I'm learning things that are hard, right? Something that actually presents a challenge because I need to be stimulated mentally. I need that. I can't just do easy stuff. And that's the benefit that I got out of this. As fucked up as it is, but I know, because patterns is everything. I'm telling you, patterns. I use creative outlets as well. So not just the logical side of the mind, but also writing. I use writing as my biggest thing. And like I said earlier, I started writing in 2012. So I use that to change the narrative in my PTSD flashbacks, dreams, and nightmares. See? Stuff that was meant to disempower me, stuff that's meant to break me down over and over again. I found a way to transmute my pain through lyrical poetry and allow my dreams and nightmares to inspire me to write psychological and spiritual stories that carry profound symbolism. And the act of me doing this gives me control over the narrative, which makes it empowering. And soon enough, the enemy's gonna run out of ideas, because everything the enemy tries to throw at me, I turn it into something that empowers me. And then I use that insight to enlighten other people, other survivors who watch me or who read my blog. Perspective is key to overcoming past traumas. That is something we cannot change. Again, we cannot change what was done to us. We can't go back in time and prevent things from happening. But the way I did it is I get to a point where I'm thankful that I got to experience something that ended up, for one, protecting me, and also I used it to work in my favor. So what was meant to destroy me ended up elevating me. And I know that sounds crazy as fuck, because again, as fucked up as it is to go through SA, as much psychological turbulence that I faced, and having difficulty navigating around that, and with my mental health and things like that, I have got to say that I had to force myself to shift my perspective on it in a way that will allow me to win in life. And sometimes that requires you to look at the situation in a way that makes you look crazy to other people. Like, dang, like you're so fearless. It's like, well, you get to a point where you can't be fearful no more. You can't be afraid of everything. You don't have the luxury to be afraid, because you were in situations where, yeah, you were scared, you were afraid, and rightfully so. But you get to a point where that fear is not protecting me. The fear is actually making me feel weaker. So you have to find a way to gain strength and to make sure that the fear does not overpower you and bring you down. And that in of itself is a challenge, because it's normal to feel afraid. It's okay. You're a human being. It's okay to be a human being, but you get to a point where certain experiences damn near made you bionic, damn near made you a titan, Some of us were teen titans, you know, because the way that we're able to transmute this dark energy from the curse mark of SA, the way we're able to transform that into something that empowers us is damn near bionic. This is divine work right here. So it gets to a point where the enemy gets so tired of attacking us, because every time he attacks us, all he's doing is inspiring us to you know, you're giving us story plots, you know, you're giving us inspiration. And you damn near have to be you have to be kind of a little bit, you gotta be a little bit crazy to be able to turn something so dark and so painful into something that is like, what the fuck, like they can't touch you anymore. They can't, because you know you've mastered this. You've mastered the art of transmuting the negative energy that comes from the trauma. And also, when I reflect back on my life and during my formative years, I realized that I say trauma in a way protected me from getting close to people that could have hurt me, you know, but I understood the importance of healing. And because when you're trying to be with you're trying to be in a healthy relationship with a good man, you kind of have to, now you have to learn new things. You have to be willing to learn and not allow that PTSD to kick in, and you thinking that, oh my God, this person is, you know, a lot of times we have to understand our triggers, because a lot of times it makes no sense when we really think about it. We get triggered mainly because of the past. Most of my triggers was linked to past traumas, you know, and a lot of us, we don't have the self-awareness to realize that. But I'm gonna leave with this note right here. You know you're not being abused by the person that you're with if you manage to grow to such an extent where you're able to make powerful moves in life. So think about that, you know, keep that in mind, because I know that PTSD can sometimes kick our ass and we start to think, oh my God, what this person's, you know, I am in a place where I'm in a place of peace, you know, so I definitely was able to make it to this point, so I'm very happy about it. And that's one thing that I recall, like, if you're really with a person that is not good for you, you would never be able to heal. You would never be able to reach a point in life where you have peace on a day-to-day basis. You wouldn't even have energy. Your energy would be drained. And really evaluate how you are. What is your state of mind? Where is your energy going to? What is causing you to be drained? Is it your job, or is it your partner, or is it something else? So these are things we have to really practice self-awareness, so that we know. That way we don't push away the right people. We don't want to live in the past and have this new person pay for the sins of the previous, you know, shitty individuals. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But always remember, you know you're with the right person if you've been able to heal to the extent that I have, like in my case. So I leave you with that, you know. I hope this video was helpful for anyone out there.